Hello, my friends, and welcome to a very exciting episode of the Revenge of the Party Nerds podcast. We are coming to you live from a very secret location high in the Hollywoodland Hills area of Los Angeles, California. I'm Richard Gabai here with my brother from another mother and another father, Robert Carradine.
Top of the day.
How you doing, Bobby?
Just bitching.
And that kind of reminds me of a little retro feel. Bobby and I were talking about the world we've lived in for many years. Myself now.
Don't tell them how long.
A long time.
Long time.
Bobby a lot longer.
A lot longer.
But things happen in Hollywood and in Los Angeles and while we're working that you think, like you couldn't make it up. You know, and you tell people these stories or the things that happen, and it's like, if I put it in a movie, you know, people wouldn't believe it.
Right. They think, oh, they just wrote that. That didn't happen. But we got some good stories.
Yeah, so we wanted to share some of the stories of some of the things that have happened to us that just seem so kind of, I don't know, surreal in a certain way. So for me, there's a bunch that come back to my movie Virgin High, which was one of the films that I made back in 1990. I had just finished Assault of the Party Nerds, and my agent, the late great Fred Amzell, walked me across the street to the legendary producer Menachem Golan's office, and he put in a VHS tape, and Menachem watched the first 5 minutes, and he said, "It's excellent. Can you do another one?" And I had a pitch in my mind. I said, well, I want to make a movie called Virgin High. It's Fast Times at Ridgemont High at Catholic School. Because as Bobby knows, I started out just ripping off movies I liked. So I ripped off his movie to make Assault of the Party Nerds. And then I figured I'd rip off Ridgemont High and set it in Catholic school. I had never gone to Catholic school, but I did have a buddy of mine who wrote that screenplay that said he wanted to write a teen comedy. And so then we instantly went back and wrote the script. But the interesting thing is when we went to make the movie, and we were shooting the movie, part of it down in Costa Mesa in Orange County. And the irony is we dressed a shuttered Jewish synagogue as a Catholic school. We brought in all these statues of Mary and all this sort of stuff. And I don't know how many people out there have seen the movie, but it's a movie that's aged well, and it still continues to be a fan favorite, thank God. But anyway, so we're shooting the movie, and we had like 10 extras. It was a Catholic girls' school, and I had disguised myself as a priest to go in to try and infiltrate the academy to talk to my girlfriend and get her back, And these 10 girls are dressed in these Catholic schoolgirl outfits, and they all looked adorable. But there was this one girl. I just looked at her and I said, "That girl is a movie star." I had no idea of anything, and I had no ulterior motives, honestly, other than creative. I just walked up to her and I said, "Hi, I'm Richard, what's your name?" And she said, "Oh, my name's Leslie." And it was in fact Leslie Mann, who we all know has gone on to become a really huge star.
Right.
But her first gig apparently was being an extra in my film. And we were shooting the movie, we're working through the day, it was a 10-day movie, 9-day movie, 9 days, shot on 35 millimeter film with no video tap, like filmmaking. Anyway, we're a few hours into the day, and anytime these girls are walking through, she just lit up like a light bulb. And we've all been on sets. You see somebody, that person has got it. So I went up to her and I said, I'm just thinking, there's this classroom scene, and maybe at lunch I could write a little bit and give you a couple of lines. And it's amazing how it turned out that she became this huge star, right? But I said, "Would you be up for that?" And she said, "Oh yeah, that'd be," she was so excited, okay? And so, anyway, the result of that was this scene we have. Max, you got that ready?
Yeah.
Yeah, so let's run this little bit. She's known as credited as the Squiggle Girl.
Which brings the question, what is theology? What is theology? Who can tell me what this is?
A squiggle?
I didn't call on you yet.
Yeah, I know this is ridiculous.
It's ridiculous.
Anybody? Anybody?
I'm playing a character named Father Goose. It's Dutch.
A squiggle?
Exactly. But who can tell me the theological ramifications of this squiggle? Come on, anybody. Let's not be bashful.
All right. Well, anyway, so yeah, it's a silly kind of meaningless interaction that I don't know what I was thinking, but you know, at like 22 years old, you're not really thinking that much. You're just going with it.
That's true.
So anyway, so after we shoot that scene, and then afterwards, that was just when the IMDb started. And she comes up to me afterwards. She goes, "Richard, does this mean I'm gonna get an IMDb credit?" And I said, "Yeah." She literally was jumping up and down. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, you just made somebody's day, whatever." So we jump a bunch of years forward. And she is starring in The Cable Guy with Jim Carrey and Matthew Broderick. And Entertainment Tonight called me and said, "Hi, is this Richard Gabai, the filmmaker, actor, whatever?" I said, "Yeah." They said, "Well, we're doing a story on Leslie Mann, and The Cable Guy was opening that weekend." It actually used to be a thing when a movie would open, everyone would hear about it, and it would be a big deal. In case, remember that?
I do remember that.
You know,
yeah.
there weren't 97 million channels of television and
Right.
like in the theater and on demand tomorrow. you know.
Right.
Anyway, and she said, "Do you have the clip of Virgin High?" And I just thought about it for a minute, and you know, I was really happy with what had gone on with her career, and I kind of a little patting myself on the back, saying I knew she was going to be a star, you know. And I just said to myself, if I was Leslie Mann and I was opening in this huge movie on, you know, this weekend, I really wouldn't want the clip from Virgin High on Entertainment Tonight. I would maybe a little too self-deprecating. I said, it's not going to do anything for me, and if I was her, I wouldn't. So I thought I kind of took the high road, I thought. I just said, well, you know, the movie's in the MGM library now. I don't own it. I'm so happy and excited for her, and do a really great piece on her. May or may not have been, you know, I guess in show business, so you're supposed any publicity is good publicity.
So they say.
So they say, but in my mind, I thought I was doing the right thing, like not showing that clip, because as you saw, it's kind of a silly clip. So what becomes hilarious is about 7 or 8 years ago, my phone rings. I pick it up. I go, "Hello?" And I hear this voice. She goes, "Richard, this is Leslie. Leslie Mann, do you remember me?" "Yes, how are you?" Then she said, "Do you remember your film Virgin High?" Yes. So now I'm thinking, at this point, she's married to Judd Apatow, who is one of the most talented producer, director, writers in the history of our business,
Yeah, he's good.
and one of the most successful. And he's always at the top of his game. The guy's a genius. So now I'm thinking, holy crap, Judd wants to remake Virgin High, right? Right? Isn't that what you'd be thinking? She's like, I was ready, like, yeah, you know, my husband Judd really liked your film. No. Anyway, she says, I said, yeah, of course, you know, I remember Virgin High. And she says, well, you know, I wasn't really, she says this, she goes, I wasn't really in it. Can you talk to the IMDb and ask them to remove my credit? Whew. So I said, you know, and anyone who has anything to do with IMDb, once credits are in, it's pretty...
Oh, no, you can't change anything.
You can't really change things. But I'm thinking, you know, okay, first of all, congratulations, you're a huge star. And she, by the way, she was very sweet. She asked me if I was well, and, you know, how are you? And then I got to congratulate her on her amazing career and everything. But anyway, I said, you know, you're kind of married to the most powerful man in Hollywood. I would think he'd probably have a better shot changing your IMDb credit than me,
Right,
you know.
right.
But the irony, but it continues. So we just said goodbye to each other, and she was very nice, and she was always very nice, you know. And we both know that all human beings are insecure, and we all are always worried about our careers.
Speak for yourself.
Well, I mean, okay, I'm speaking for myself and for my friend Bobby. Anyway, but I didn't really hold any kind of what I was like. It just kind of was like, okay, Judd doesn't want to relicense my movie. She's no longer happy about the credit, I guess. But then I'm sitting at home about a couple of years after that, and she's on Late Night with Andy Cohen, right? So I've always believed, and I am a person of faith, even though I don't really walk the walk as much as I would like to. God is running the world. I'm watching Late Night with Andy Cohen, and there's Leslie Mann, I think, like with Cameron Diaz and another really famous actress, promoting like their latest, high-end chick flick. And the episode of Late Night with Andy Cohen, and we have to find this somehow. This episode opens up, and he shows that scene from Virgin High. He punks her with the scene. And she just turned beet red. And Andy was like, who's that guy? He's kind of sexy, It was hilarious. So like, even though I at first I said, after we had the conversation, I said, I should have given Entertainment Tonight that clip from Virgin High, right? Because I should have done it then. But then Andy Cohen took care of it for me. So thank you, Andy. We actually need that clip. Hopefully my producers can get in touch with that show, and we'll use it in another episode. And I continue to be very happy for Leslie Mann, and proud of the fact that she's killing it.
She's killing it, man.
So Bobby,
Yeah.
you've been around maybe 5 minutes longer than me. I met some strange things have happened to you as well. What happened on the Long Riders you were talking about?
Well, on the Long Riders, which was a Western starring my brothers and me, and the Quaids, and the Keach brothers, and the Guest brothers, I remember we went to the premiere for the film, and I was very taken with my brother David's performance. And we're walking out of the theater. I said, hey, Dave, man, you stole that movie. He said, no, I didn't, Bobby. I took it fair and square.
Ha!
Now, another thing that happened on the Long Riders, we're shooting a scene where we're supposed to be planning our next raid on the train or whatever. A bank we're gonna rob or something. But the cast is kind of set up in a semicircle, and the camera's going around to each guy, and each guy has a line. And we're all listening to James Keach, who plays Jesse James, lay out the plan.
Right.
So they get to David's line, and he's asleep. And James Keach goes, thanks, Dave. So, that's my brother David.
Right.
Now, on another film I did with Dave, Americana, we're in Kansas. A little tiny town. It's not even really a town. It's a wide spot in the road. And we're shooting, and, Kansas has tornadoes. So we're shooting, and sure enough, there's a tornado coming towards us. Big one. Perfect V-shaped cloud, the whole deal.
Just like in the movies.
Just like in the movies, except this is real. And we're like, Dave, turn the camera around. You got to get that. He goes, nope, we're shooting over here. We're over here. He was directing.
Right.
He didn't film the tornado in Panavision.
Well, your brother David was an eccentric gentleman.
Okay, I got another story about David where he's
All right.
kind of eccentric. I came home from school. I was going to Hollywood High and living with my brother David. And he had this dog named
In
Buffalo.
a teepee? Is this when you were living in a teepee?
I only lived in the teepee for a month.
Okay.
But yeah,
Yes, Robert Carradine lived in a teepee in his brother's backyard for a month.
I did
Film
that.
at 11.
I did that. Anyhow, I get home from school and, I'm hanging out and it's getting near dinner time and David's making a salad. And, he's peeling off the outer layers of the lettuce because you don't want to eat those.
Right.
And he takes them and he sticks them in the dog's food bowl. I go, what are you doing, man? The dog's not going to eat lettuce. He says, oh, yeah, he loves lettuce. I go, really? And he just cracks up. Now, this is the key to the whole story is that David didn't joke. This is a pretty good joke that the dog eats lettuce, right?
Right.
I'm telling you, man, my brother, piece of work.
But you lived to tell.
I did.
Thank God.
I have another story about David.
Yeah, lay it on me, man.
No, this is in Kansas, the same movie. There was LSD on the set. This is 1972. LSD was prevalent.
For the kids that are more into crack and meth, LSD is a hallucinogenic drug.
Well, it's also organic,
Right. Organic. Well,
Yeah.
acid's organic, right?
Yeah.
Is that acid?
Or
Right.
organic acid.
Right.
So
Organic
anyhow,
acid, yeah.
I don't even know why I did it, but I took some acid, and
Wow.
I started coming onto the acid. And it was evening, and we're in the whole crew is sharing a 2-story house.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm downstairs, and I'm hanging out with part of the crew. And there's this big furnace in the middle of the living room.
Uh-huh.
And it's like the flames are in there, and they're kind of glowing at me and everything. And I'm coming onto the LSD.
Were they talking to you?
Not quite. But I'm looking at my hands, and all of a sudden I said, wow, I'm the real Kung Fu. So I got to go tell Dave. So I start creeping up the stairs, and I'm holding my hands like that, because I'm gonna show him, right? And one of the stairs kind of creaks, and I stop, and I go, wait a second. If I'm the real Kung Fu, that stair shouldn't have squeaked. Ah, fuck it. So I go up the stairs, and David's in bed with Barbara Hershey. You know, they're just sleeping.
Right.
I pounce on David. He opens his eyes, and I go, I'm the real Kung Fu. He looks at me and he goes, who cares? And I went off.
He didn't skip a beat.
No, I went off, man. We got, it was a physical fight.
Was that?
I remember I was looking at him, and then there was this like kind of a big crashing sound, and I was looking over here.
Was that did your living with David end soon after that, or did everything smooth back over? I mean,
Oh, I smoothed back over. Once I came down, it was
he
fine.
woke up and didn't remember it happened, probably.
No, he remembered.
Oh, he remembered.
So did I. Had a big black and blue spot
But did
on
he
my
prove
chin.
he was the real Kung Fu?
Oh yeah, he's the real Kung Fu.
He was the real Kung Fu. You know, we were talking about Virgin High. A funny thing happened like many years later. I'm lying in my apartment in Hollywood, and the story just broke when they made these allegations about Michael Jackson, and so I was like, everyone was talking about that. So I'm lying, and after a night of carousing, which is what I kind of did every night back in those days, I wake up and my phone rings. I answer the phone. They're like, "Rich, did you see hear the news? Can you believe what's going on?" And I was like, "Yeah, that's kind of weird. You know, I'm a huge Michael Jackson fan. Like, I don't know if I believe it or what." He goes, "No, I'm not talking about Michael Jackson." He goes, "Turn on the radio and go get the trades." And it was on the radio because there was this thing called radio, and there'd be the news, and the trades were paper. And I turned on the radio and I didn't hear anything. And then I went down. I lived right off of Melrose. That's back when people used to live there. And I walked down to the newsstand where they used to sell newspapers and magazines. And
These
I grabbed
are things that you read.
Yeah, and I grabbed Daily Variety, and frickin', it was Variety of the Reporter, and we're definitely going to look this up, but the Archbishop of Los Angeles sued HBO, who aired Virgin High, Columbia Pictures, who released it on video, 21st Century Film Corporation, which was the producing company, and Richard Gabai for $500,000.
Wow.
And like at that time, I had a motorcycle and a Barracuda convertible. I rarely ever had next month's rent, you know? And I was wondering like, wait a minute, what the hell? And they were suing us for defamation for the movie Virgin High. Because what happened is when we were making the movie, we needed like some stained glass window in church locations. And I went to there's a big church in Beverly Hills. And I went to that church, and I've always kept everything above board. And I, again, going to credit my dad, who taught me to, mean what you say and say what you do. I went there and I said, I'm making an R-rated comedy, and there's church locations, and I'm trying to get permission to like film stained glass windows, exteriors of churches to integrate into my movie. And there was a priest there, and he's like, he gave me like a little blessing and stuff. And I left him the script. And I said, he goes, we'll come back in a few days. And I left him the script to Virgin High. And it's a complete parody. It's nothing it's like, anyway, so I came back and he goes, you can come here. And it was just me and my cameraman, Howard Wexler. We were just establishing shots and beautiful stained glass window shots to use as sort of cutaways and use as transitions. Anyway, we do all this thing. Then again, he gives me a blessing of some kind of a thing, I use that in my character later. I learned all that stuff, right?
Yeah, you did it really well.
Thank you. And Anyway, it was all fine. You know, I didn't. But anyway, so like in those days, HBO had one channel, right? It wasn't like HBO had 20 channels and there was 1,000 other networks that also had 20 channels. So like if your movie was on at 8 p.m. on Saturday night on HBO, a lot of people saw it.
Yeah.
Like in those days, you know, I was never Robert Carradine, but I would walk into a bar and they'd be like, oh, you're that guy from that movie, you know? So anyway, I wake up to this lawsuit, and then when I got back with the newspaper, I'm kind of like in a cold sweat, because it wasn't like a common thing. I didn't know what it really meant, you know? I'm like, are they gonna take my car? I mean, what, you know? But I had the location release, you know? So all I wanted to do was show that location release. So then this lawyer calls me from New York. He's like, hi, I'm, you know, Joe Goldberg from HBO. I said, hi. He said, I'm representing you on this case. I said, okay, I don't have any money. He goes, no, you're not paying me, HBO is. He goes, I need a copy of the movie. And I said, well, I have a location release. Can't we just show the judge the location release that I, you know? No, it doesn't work like that. Okay. So I literally FedExed on his FedEx account a VHS of Virgin High to him. He calls me back the next day. He goes, this is going to get thrown out tomorrow. So you can't sue on a parody movie. So I didn't get to show that like I was an upstanding person and I had a location release and I had shown them the script, you know, all that stuff. So like HBO would get sued every week if you could sue on a parody.
Right.
Because they make fun of everybody.
Right.
You know, they could, you know, everyone from Donald Trump to Joe Biden and everybody in between could sue them every week for defamation.
Of course.
But anyway, the movie's a parody. So the punchline is that it got thrown out. But you know, when it gets thrown out, it's not on the cover of the trades.
No, it's definitely not. Yep. Just the part where you get sued. So
Correct.
Getting back to David.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I'm living with David, and he had like 3 or 4 cars, like exotic cars. And one of them was a Maserati Oscar, which kind of looked like an upside-down bathtub. And it had a Buick aluminum V8 in it, which it came with a 4-cylinder. It was very lightweight, very high performance. So we're parking in the garage in front of the house, and he's getting really close to the wall. I said, Dave, look out for the wall, man. He goes, hey, I know how to drive. You just sit there and just shut up. Okay, man, okay. So the next time he's getting close to a wall, I don't say nothing, and he hits the wall. He goes, why didn't you say anything? That was Dave. Just unbelievable.
Well, there you go. But we loved him and we miss him.
Another time. This might have been at the premiere of The Long Riders, because I think we showed it at MGM, because it used to be MGM UA.
Right.
It was a UA film. We're walking in, and there's people walking in with us, you know, to go to the premiere, and David just stops and unzips his fly and urinates. I go, Dave, what are you doing, man? He said, Bobby, I'm a movie star.
You know, I was walking down Ventura Boulevard the other day, and there was this gentleman kind of looking a little bit disheveled, and he did the same thing, and now I know. It was he's also a movie star.
Yeah.
But you know, what you're talking about siblings, and it reminds me of kind of a pretty hilarious and kind of creepy, not crazy creepy story. I went to Miami like in 1995 to make this movie called Kickboxing Academy with Stephen Bauer and a bunch of
Rocky
kids.
Rocky
Echeverria, yeah. And but mostly it was cast locally, right? With a bunch of kids. It was a kids kickboxing. It was like kind of a Karate Kid type of whatever. You know, everyone was making these martial art movies. And I'm down there, we're doing some casting, and this woman, this local talent manager says, I have the 2 leads of your movie. And like every good manager calls and says they've got the right. Anyway, so I met with all these people and we're casting the movie, and I met, and another one that I instantly knew was a huge star. The movie stars Kyler Lee. Kyler Lee came in, and she's become a huge star from ER and everything else. I mean, she's a major star. It's another one who just lit up, and I think she was like 14 or 15 in Kickboxing Academy. Kyler Lee, Leigh. And then we're casting, there was 2 kind of guys opposite her. you know, the soon-to-be ex-boyfriend and then the hero boyfriend who wins the fight at the end. And this kid comes in who's really a good-looking, charismatic kid and is really good at the martial arts. And his name is Christopher Kamen Lee, L-E-E. Christopher Kamen, he said, well, my full name is Christopher Kamen Lee, L-E-E. And you know me as an old movie buff, I'm thinking, well, you know, kind of like that in Christopher Lee, Major Star, you know.
Right.
Yeah, I was like, oh, and this kid's really, really cool. And I called up the manager, the woman, I said, you know, you're right. You have brought me the two leads to this film. And it was a very low budget film. We were shooting it in 15 days on film with one camera, you know. Hard to do those things. I don't know how the heck we did all that stuff and tons of coverage. But anyway, we hire them. And like day 3 of shooting, and they're romantic in the movie. I don't know, do we have a clip from Kickboxing Academy? You know, there's a trailer for Kickboxing Academy online. There's a pretty good trailer for Kickboxing Academy online somewhere. We should bring that up in a minute. Anyway, we're on like day 3, and at first I find out that the manager is Kyler Lee's mother.
In the spirit of the Mighty Ducks and the Three Ninjas, Kickboxing Academy.
I'm not so sure about this kickboxing thing anyway.
I may have to teach you some of my secret moves.
Starring Donna Barnes and Stephen Bauer. With Tony Pacheco and introducing Kyler Lee. This summer, the kids at the Kickboxing Academy will learn about life, about friendship, about themselves, and that sometimes the only choice is to fight. Hajime! Hajime! Kickboxing Academy.
Kickboxing rocks.
Anyway, so I find out she is not only Kyler Lee's mother, she is also Christopher Kamen Lee, L-E-E's mother. They are full brother and sister.
Wow.
And the spelling of the name is a total, like, let's fool the producer or director. And now I'm like, oh, holy crap. Now, and I said, we're like 7 days in of a 15-day movie, you know? And they kiss at the end of the movie, and they did it. And I was like, well, I guess I'm in the South, so it's okay. Like, I didn't know, what do you do? And so now there's some very righteous and truthful trolling about this whole deal. Like,
wow, that's beautiful.
If you search YouTube, they're like, Kyler Lee kissing her brother, you know, and all that. But I mean, at that point, what do? You don't
keep going, man. You gotta keep going.
You can't start over, right? You can't start over.
So if he were to marry...
So nepotism, you know, you used to tell me that when David would get a movie, like, they take Keith and you get Bobby as a
No, you want David, you'll take Keith, you get Bobby.
Okay.
Yeah.
You want David, you'll take Keith, you get Bobby. This was one where, like, it was kind of a different kind of nepotism story, if you know what I mean.
Well, if they got married, would they still be brother and sister?
I guess it depends what state you live in, but
Okay.
Kyler, but they were both great to work with, and then like once I knew, they both kind of blushed, and I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna project all of my vitriol towards your mother.
I can't wait to see this movie.
Oh, look, it is what it is. It streams everywhere. It does what it's supposed to do. The great news is, you know, as you know, my son Raphael's in school in Miami now, and we spend a lot of time out there now, and I was always like, it's one of those things, kind of like Party Nerds and Virgin High. For a long time, you know, I was making all these thrillers. I made the Western we did. I'm making all these movies of the week. And I'm kind of like, this stuff, it doesn't matter. It was just some junk I did. So I kind of, you know, downplay it and say it's crap, but it's not. Because I watched Kickboxing Academy with my son, who's 18, and he was just rolling on the floor laughing at all the dumb jokes. And so that's the goal, right?
Yeah.
It's entertainment.
Well, you know, I was on a film back in the mid-'70s, and well, anyway, the leading lady and I were fond of each other, and I thought, well, this is really cool, man. I think I'm in love. So, the movie winds up. We're back in L.A. I can't even get her on the phone.
That's
I'm
what's
like,
called
that's what's called a location romance.
That's called a location ship.
Yeah, I was very young. I didn't know.
Right.
And I was crushed.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, so that happened.
That's happened to me on like 7 movies.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, it's only happened to me on 2.
Yeah, but thankfully it hasn't happened for the last 25 years. It's a good
That's a
safety
good thing.
valve.
Yes.
And I think I remember when we were talking a while ago. I think we both have Ringo Starr stories.
Oh, a Ringo Starr story. I was
Yep.
at the Cannes Film Festival with the Long Riders and the Big Red One,
Right.
which were 2 of the 4 entries from the United States. So I was hot as shit. And we were
Hot or
hanging...
a fresh one.
Fresh shit.
Yeah.
Very hot.
Okay.
And so anyhow, I was with David, and we see Ringo Starr standing out in front of the Carlton Hotel on right on the edge of where the street turns into sand. He's just looking at the ocean. It's dusk, and David walks up to Ringo and says, "Hey, man." And Ringo looks at David and he goes, "Oh, hey, man." And David says, "You want to smoke a joint?" And Ringo says, "Sure." We smoked a joint with Ringo Starr in Cannes.
That's cool. Unfortunately, my Ringo Starr
Oh,
story.
your story's not
it's
good.
It's not as good. It was in a joint, but I don't remember exactly what year this was, but it was somewhere, a good while ago, and I used to use this film lab, which is still a great lab in town called Photochem, right? And when you're doing a lot of work, you have a sales rep and you have a relationship, and my sales rep called me, kind of out of the blue, and he goes, "Richard, I have a situation, and I think you're going to love it." And I was like, "Yeah, okay. Well, what is it? What is it?" He said, "Well, I'm getting ready to work with Ringo Starr. He wants to produce an independent film, and he has all kinds of questions, and he wants to spend as little money as possible, and he wants to make as great a film as he can." And I told him that, well, I have this director, actor, producer, because I think he was maybe going to be in the movie as well with his wife, Barbara Bach. And he's a great filmmaker. Thank you. And I was very flattered. He said, so they're going to see Merle Haggard at the House of Blues in the Foundation Room, and there's a dinner. And do you want to come? I'll be there, and I'm going to sit you opposite Ringo and Barbara Bach. And I was like, yeah, heck yeah. So, he said, the show's at like 8, but like get there at 6:30, because we're going to eat and then the concert and whatever. And so, of course, I got there at 5:30. I don't want to miss this. And I'm sitting there, Ringo, and the tables all get full up, and Ringo and Barbara sit down. She was extremely sweet and friendly and stunning, of course.
Of course.
And Ringo was sort of very reserved, and extremely tiny, extremely thin and short. But anyway, I just remember that. Anyway, so I was starstruck, but I kept my cool because, I had been in Hollywood for a while and I'd met some people. I didn't like fawn over him or anything. And he started asking me questions. I mean, what an extremely insightful and intelligent guy. And he he didn't look at notes like, you and I are. And he had this list of questions in his brain. And I proceeded to talk to him. It was 3 hours. By the time we were done speaking, I literally looked over that little ledge, if you remember the old House of Blues in Hollywood,
Yeah.
and the concert was ending. I missed the entire concert, and I was excited to see Merle Haggard. Thankfully, I did see him again later on down the line. But for 3 hours, he interviews me, and I was telling him things, because, it's not like I wouldn't help my friends, get by with a little help from my friends, but, there's certain things, he literally, I was like, well, this thing I did, because, I started making movies when I was still a college student, right? So, and in LA at the time, I don't know how it is this week, but if you were a student, you could get a film permit either for free or for really cheap. So there was a time where I had a student on my crew, so I had them pull the permit for me.
Right, of course.
I told him all the stuff, all the little stuff, and I told him, joking with the Photochem rep, I'm sorry, I can't remember his name, right now, I should have looked up, but I was like, and plus, whatever price he tells you, you can always beat him up more. And then once you get rolling and you start doing more stuff, go back to him, So I literally told him everything I knew and stuff that I wouldn't share with anybody. But I'm here with a Beatle, right?
Yeah.
And I shared every single secret, every single trick. The concert ends. The conversation ends. He stands up, looks at his wife, and I was like, hey, Ringo, I know it was really great to meet you. I said, and this is before, people are selling autographs. It's before, all that sort of stuff. There was no selfie camera. It was before the iPhone. I'm like, Ringo, I said, it's nice meeting you. I would appreciate it if I could I get an autograph? He looks at me and he's like, no. Walks away. Barbara Bach, though, said, you're adorable, Richard. Thank you so much for all the information. I'm so sorry. Like, he turned me down.
Right.
She gave me a kiss on the cheek and walked away. I was
Wow.
like, I literally told the guy everything I knew about the business I'd already spent, whatever, probably at that time, 15 years in. He turned me down for a freaking autograph. Then, like a few years later, it was announced, do not send anything to Ringo. He will not sign autographs. But anyway, your Ringo Starr story is more pleasant. But I
It's
did
a
meet
lot
the man.
shorter, too.
I did hang out with him. What?
I said it's a lot shorter, too.
Yeah, I know.
My
I'm
story.
sorry.
No,
I
it's all right.
ramble on. I
no,
won't
it's
ramble
all right.
on so much. This is my therapy, I need to get this stuff out.
Well, I have
to get this stuff out.
a Nerds event. We went to the premiere. I brought my dad to the premiere of Revenge of the Nerds.
So there's John Carradine at the premiere of Revenge of the Nerds.
Yeah.
Robert, what type of motion picture is this?
He didn't ask. So the show goes on, the lights come up. I go, so, Dad, what'd you think? Son, it's not Shakespeare.
There you go.
That was his review.
I'll give you a short story. So
Short one?
I'm making a movie called Pop Star for New Line Cinema. 3 generations of pop stars. David Cassidy, of blessed memory, Leif Garrett, and Aaron Carter, who was a sweetheart, and unfortunately we lost fairly recently. A great kid. But anyway, the big get was David Cassidy. He was starring in this Vegas show, and if you looked at his resume, he had not done a lot of movies. So he calls me up. He goes, Richard, I just read your script. Your producer made me a really shitty offer. He wants to pay me $25,000 for a week. I make $75,000 a week in Las Vegas. Why would I take a week off to do your movie? And I'm like, well, I don't know. He goes, I like your script. I want to make the movie. But you got to make one thing happen. And so I only stay, there's only one place in Los Angeles that I stay when I'm working. So I'm thinking, okay, like L'Hermitage, like the Peninsula, like, places that are like whatever, $1,500 a night, or, and I was like, well, I'll take it out of my salary to get David Cassidy, whatever, if they won't pay it. I said, yes. He said, you have to make this happen. Do you understand? I said, yeah. He goes, I only stay at the Sportsman's Lodge. It's like, David, done. And we got him like the suite at the time. The Sportsman's Lodge was like $225 a night or something. Right. And he was great to work with. That was just hilarious. Because
that's
I
really
guess in
funny.
the 70s, whenever he was really on fire, the Sportsman's Lodge was it, right?
Yeah.
I guess.
I guess.
I'm going to lay on another short one while you're figuring that out.
No, I got it.
Oh,
I got it. It was on a Chuck Norris movie with my brother David called Lone Wolf McQuade.
Was this one where you'll take Bobby or you'll get Bobby?
No, this is David. David and Chuck Norris.
Okay.
And they're dire enemies. So they're setting up a shot, and David is supposed to kick towards the lens.
Uh-huh.
And they're all concerned. They want to put like a plexiglass thing in front of the lens just in case David's a little bit off. Mm-hmm. And he goes, oh, that's a bunch of bullshit. And he throws a kick at the lens, and it stops right in front of the lens. He goes, see? Well, David had a reputation of being barefoot.
Right.
But his character was wearing cowboy boots. So when they shot the shot, he kicked the lens. Blackened the eye of the cinematographer, broke the main element of the lens. I don't know how much those lenses cost. They got to be
Tens of thousands.
Tens of thousands, yeah.
At a minimum, tens of thousands.
Yeah. Yeah, some brother, man.
This stuff happens.
Yeah.
So on a side humorous note, when our son was a little boy like 3, and just still not really 3, maybe 4, comprehending what movies are, his favorite film was Tim Burton's Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. And the actor who played all the Oompa Loompas was this actor has become a very good friend of mine in the family, is Deep Roy, who's a little person. And, but he's 6 foot tall in anyone's eyes because the guy's just so dynamic. But we made this educational film with Chris Lloyd, and Deep and I, we became good friends. And we were having a dinner party, and Deep was coming over. And I said to Raphael, I said, listen, you know, his name is Mr. Roy. You know, he's not an Oompa Loompa. You know, it's not, you know, he's still not really understanding what movies are, even though he had been to my sets or whatever. But, you know, I said, his name is Mr. Roy. So you say, nice to meet you, Mr. Roy, you know, that type of thing. So he comes over, Deep comes over with the other people we were hanging out with that night. Maybe even you were there, I don't know. Anyway, so he says, he's a really adorable little boy. He says, nice to meet you, Mr. Roy. My father told me you're a wonderful actor. You know, he did that whole proper good little boy thing. We had this dinner party. You know, Raphael goes to bed, he's a little kid, and we were carousing and we were drinking and partying and just having a great freaking time. And being responsible people that we are, I said to Deep, I was like, hey man, you've had a few. He said, absolutely, can I crash in your guest room? And I said, for sure. So Deep sleeping in the guest room. So in the morning, you know, the little boys wake up early. I'm up. I'm making coffee, and Raphael walks in. And I was like, "Hey, you know, Raphael, you know, we were drinking last night, and as you know, we don't drink and drive. We don't do, you know, we stay safe." He said, "So I said, so Mr. Roy slept in the house." He screams at the top of his lungs, "The Oompa Loompa slept in my house!" As Deep walks into the kitchen.
That's good.
He screamed at the top of his lungs, "The Oompa Loompa slept in my house!"
That's good.
It's what happens.
Yeah, man. So, you know, there was this film I did called The Pom Pom Girls, and I played kind of a wild young man, you know, nothing like myself.
Nothing like you. Kind of like Revenge of the Nerds.
Yeah.
You should have got an Oscar for that because it's nothing like you.
Exactly.
Now the
exactly.
Pom Pom Girls, yeah.
Pom Pom Girls, and there was a sequence where I had to chase my nemesis with a car. We're driving in a 55 Chevy that was hopped up, had a big motor and all that. Mm-hmm. I'm chasing him down a sidewalk. I'm driving. He's running right in front of the car. This is back in the era when they let actors do their own stunts.
Wow.
I could have killed him.
Oh, man.
I mean, easy. He was right in front of the car, and I'm chasing him. Can you believe that?
Well, you know, things have changed.
Yeah, yeah.
But I want to tell, I'm realizing I have a whole bunch of notes. We're going to have to get back to some of these because I know we both have Tarantino stories, but we're going to save that for another day. Going back to the kind of in the beginning, like right after Virgin High, we made a sequel called Hot Under the Collar. And Bobby, I think you can relate to this, being a celebrity your whole life, which, you know, we can joke about, but it's just freaking true.
Take your word for it.
You meet some people and, you know, you have friends, and then you meet people that like you either worked with or you've met, and even though they're good people or whatever, you're not like there isn't that thing. We often talk about like because we became really good friends 15 years ago, when we're not in our 20s anymore, where it's kind of rare, right?
Yeah.
Where you have a thing where you're actually just hanging out and you enjoy each other's company, and all that sort of stuff. Like all we talk about is guitars and cars and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Anyway, so this friend of mine, I had this friend, and he was one of those guys that I liked, but I wasn't like. I didn't want to hang out. And he invited me to like 2 or 3 different things, and I always kind of made an excuse. And then he invites me, he goes, well, my agency is having a party at the Upside Down Bar, there was one in New York and one in LA, Upside Down Cafe, Upside Down, whatever it was. And he said, just, you know, come by it's at happy hour, da-da-da-da. Like, oh, okay. And I just said to myself, well, if I don't come to this one, I'm just a jerk, because he's just like a nice person who keeps inviting me to stuff. So I walk into this bar, it's completely empty. I order a beer. And it's a frickin', in like 1991, it's a $9 beer.
Wow.
And it's warm. My rent is like $400 a month. And you know, maybe I got $1,000 in the bank, you know, or whatever. I'm like, oh God. And I said, why don't I listen to go with your gut. I don't like the guy. Why am I here? But anyway, right away, in walks Bruce Springsteen. Backpack, white t-shirt. Walks up to the bar. So I quickly drank $27 worth of warm beers so I could muster up the courage to walk over there and introduce myself. Because I had to, because Bruce Springsteen, my ultimate musical hero. Just love that guy, love his music. everything. So I walk over there, and by then he was joined by some people, and other people showed up, and I walked up to him, he's like, looks at me, and I was like, excuse me, I don't mean to be rude, Mr. Springsteen. He cuts me off, Bruce, you know, shakes my hand. He proceeds to interview me for like 45 minutes about my career.
Wow.
Like, what the heck? And he's like, this is my wife, Patty, this is Joey, Jimmy, da-da-da. I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. Anyway, and then some friends had shown up, and they're watching me talk to Springsteen, and I'm looking, I'm like, well, I don't want to be this guy. Like, I'm intruding on this. Like, I said, I got to get it. I can't just stand here, right? It's not right. Talk about celebrity. So I said, Bruce, I'm going to get out of your way. I said, but I have a premiere that's happening in like a month, and there's no reason why you would want to come, but it would mean the world to me if I knew that I invited you. And he's like, well, you know, when is it, you know? And I tell him when the date was. He goes, oh, I think I'm going to be in Jersey. You know, I think I'll be back in Jersey. But, and he gives me this business office, his business office in Century City. And he goes, well, you know, call Jolene, I think was her name, Jolene, and let her know how we met. And she gets my mail twice a week. I'm like, okay. I call the next day. Like, I start calling at 7 in the morning. Of course, they don't pick up the phone. I met Bruce last night at this thing, and da-da-da. Yeah. Sure thing. I immediately like drive right over to Century City and hand deliver the invitation. I'm not putting it in the mail, right?
Right.
The freaking boss.
Yeah.
Anyway, so the night before the premiere, on my tape machine, which unfortunately I do not have, though I do have my message from Milton Berle, which is a story for another day. Hey Richie, it's Bruce. I'm in New Jersey like I thought. I just wanted to wish you good luck tomorrow at your premiere. And you know, the girl in my office, she loves going to those things. And if she can come, great, let her know. If she can't, no, I totally get it. I totally understand. Don't worry about it. But if she can come, great. So next morning I call, I was like, hey man, the boss is the boss. And he called me, wished me good luck. And I hope you can come tonight. And I hope you have a great time. And you know, whatever. She comes after the movie. She comes up to me, thank you, Richard. I had a great time. And I said, and please thank Bruce again. He's like the greatest guy in the world. I wrote another letter to that address, Bruce, you're the greatest guy in the world. And thank you for that message. You're the greatest guy in the world. 5 years later, I'm at the Sagebrush Cantina, which is not too far from here. At the time then, I'd become the Harley Davidson guy that a lot of Hollywood guys become in their 20s, right? Late 20s.
Yeah.
Maybe early 30s at the time, not sure. But anyway, I'm there, and of course, I am chatting up a couple of young ladies. Who walks in but Bruce Springsteen and his biker buddies? I look over there. The girls are like, oh man, that's Springsteen. I was like, yeah, I got to go say hello to him. They're like, yeah, right. So I walk over there, and when I'm like 15 feet away, he goes, Richie, the movies. I kid you not. Like, I'm talking about at the beginning of the show. Things happen, like, if you said this happened, you wouldn't believe it. And I went over to him, and he's like, you know, I was in my hotel room like 4 a.m. after a show, and I saw you on HBO running around in a priest outfit. And I said, that's the movie I invited you to the premiere of. And da-da-da. And I said, Bruce, and it was another autograph story with a different result, by the way. Different result, Ringo. Anyway, I said, you know, I'd love to get an autograph. And he said, well, I want to give you one, but not here. You know, you still have that office address and everything? And I said, yeah, I do. He said, well, right, remind me how we know each other, you know? So then I walk back over to where those girls were, and I don't know, like Fonzie and God put together, like I walk back to where I was before with the girls, there's a waitress standing there. Bruce would like to buy you a round of drinks. We get a round of beers. I look over at the bar, and it's like being in a movie. You can't make this stuff up, these things that happened in both of our lives. Bruce, I got my beer in my hand. I look over at the bar, and there's Bruce holding up a beer. Hit cheers, you know, from across the restaurant at the Sagebrush. We drink. I completely blew off those girls because they didn't believe I knew Springsteen. And anyway, so I wrote the letter. I was like, Bruce, we saw each other at the Sagebrush, and this is how we know each other. And he sent me this. This is the sheet music to Born to Run. Probably, I could argue, the most iconic rock and roll track in history. Too Rich, thanks, and good luck, Bruce Springsteen.
That's awesome, man.
Thank you, Bruce. And this has been fun, talking about these amazing stories. Did you have another one,
I have
Dakota?
another one.
Yeah,
It's a
yeah,
good
get
closer.
us another one.
Yeah. Well, some people know that I used to be a racing driver, and one of my teammates in 1991 was Paul Newman. And we drove for Lotus of America. Mm-hmm. The name of the team was Lotus Sport. And Newman was totally normal at the racetracks.
Right.
He didn't want to be bothered with autograph stuff.
Right.
But other than that, he was totally normal. And he offered me a ride on his jet to Toronto, Canada for an IndyCar race,
Whoa.
which I took him up on. So we're riding up in the jet, and they have some boxed salad on the airplane. And I said,
Wait, I have to ask you. Did it have Newman's dressing on it?
that's what I was getting there,
Oh,
man.
shoot. I'm sorry.
I said,
Oh, no.
do you have any dressing? He just looked at me like I had two heads. And he handed me a bottle of Newman's Own. I put it on this salad, and I go, yeah, this is good dressing, man. That's my Newman
That's
story.
a great one. And I think we have Newman's dressing in our fridge right now. So this has been a great thing. I mean, it's really amazing. Really, things that happen. Well, there you go. From Newman's dressing to Springsteen to
the way
Leslie
that-
Mann to all this stuff with your brother. Things happen that, like, if I put it in a movie that I'm going to meet Bruce Springsteen and 5 years later he's going to recognize me, like,
Oh, I have another story.
oh, lay it on us.
Okay, so the whole Harley thing.
Uh-huh.
Well, Nick Cage and his brother got into the Harley thing. And I'd
Right.
known Nick, like, peripherally since he did Valley Girl with my little brother, Mike Bowen.
Right.
So they had, this thing where they wanted to go ride around on the weekends, and they wanted to put logos on the back of the motorcycle jackets and the whole thing. So I got invited to go do that, and we rode down to Alvera Street in downtown LA.
Uh-huh.
Parked the bikes, and we're walking. Me and Nick are walking like down this path, between all this stuff. They're selling stuff, and these kids are walking by the other way, and I hear them as they walk by go, "Wow, that was the nerd."
There's no reason. I mean, we can keep going. What do you guys think?
I think we're done.
I don't know. I think it could be too.
Yeah, we're done. We got it.
Hey, this has been another phenomenal episode of the Revenge of the Party Nerds podcast. We will see you again next time.